All right, we've talked a lot recently about being in your villain era. But how do you be in your villain era without being I keep this podcast clean. I wish I didn't. Sometimes I wish I didn't keep this podcast clean. But I do it per the village mentality. I like to do a show that, if you have your grandma in the car, if you have your children in the car, you can still listen to the show. If you happen to know any good people, they can listen to this show with you too. So how do you be in your villain era without being a witch, without being bossy? There's a word that kind of a synonym for what I'm going for. How can we accomplish that? Because as we have discussed in previous episodes, one of them being episode 217, I reintroduced the concept of being in your villain era. Being in your villain era does not mean that you are doing objectively villainous things. It just means that you are okay with being the villain in other people's stories. It means that you are okay with setting boundaries, even if people don't like it. It means that you are okay with following your own path and just shrugging if other people don't like your path. So listen to episode 217 if you missed that one. But now what the question that I'm getting is, how do we do that and still be a good person and not seem to be aggressive and not seem to be too bossy or whatever? Because a lot of us are people pleasers. I am actually a pretty big people pleaser. And so I just can't be that person that is out there yelling at people and just, girl bossing really hard in everyone's face. I just can't do that. Now I do. Sometimes I will say, the other day, someone did something pretty disrespectful to me, and I yelled at her. I got in her face. I told her that I will never accept that kind of disrespect again in the shower the next day in my imagination.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It was, man, let me tell you, I was articulate. I was hitting all the right points, and it was even funny. And yes, it was great. Yeah. My toothbrush was like, you go. That's amazing. It was really incredible. But yeah, so no, I can't. I'm not that person. But I have learned that you do need to be bold about following your path, about setting boundaries, and about not caring what people, especially toxic people, think about it. If you are going to live a life that you are happy with, if you are going to wake up on your 40th, 50th, 60th, 70th birthday and be like, I'm actually really happy with where I am. I've been doing a great job in life, and I am happy with how things are turning out. Let me tell you, you're not going to get there if you're not in a villain era mentality. So this is kind of villain era for people pleasers. Like, how can we nicely be in our villain era and not make people too mad? So that will be the main topic today. We will get to that in the second half of the show. Depending on how on fire I am with the early topics, we might not hit that right at the 50% mark. If I'm on fire, I tend to stay on fire. That is my philosophy in the show. I have great news for you. We do have new rap beef news.
Yeah.
I've had people say, when I was talking about the comedy millions and the mishaps that have gone on in my career recently, someone said, I'll pay $100 an episode if you just do a rap beef podcast. Like I'm ready for that to just be all you talk about. So I am thrilled that you guys resonate with my rap beef content. That's honestly the greatest accomplishment of my career, that I can do this podcast to this demographic and have you guys track with my obsession with rap beef. So there is news. And that I'm also going to try a new thing, give you just a short summary of some drama in the football world, so that if you want to watch some football with the men in your life this weekend, I'll tell you a little bit of drama. So much good stuff on this fine program. But the best of it is... Okay, we have a new tour jingle. Now, Caitlin has not heard it. I told Caitlin, I said, I want you to hear it live with the listeners so that I can get your authentic reaction. I commissioned someone to write a jingle. Now, I am unable to speak about what is going on with my tour and my career without laying out everything that has happened recently. It's like a dam break. I mean, you bring up my career and I'm just going to lay it all out. As I was writing up the commission for the jingle, I just ended up spilling it all. And here is the actual and official jingle for the Jen Fulwiler Fall 2024 stand-up comedy tour.
She was dropped by her agent and manager on the same day. Iconic. Now she's entered her villain era and she's back on tour anyway. Jen Fulwiler. Jen Fulwiler. She just can't be stopped. Jen Fulwiler. This tour is gonna pop. Takes that JFComedyTour.com. JFComedyTour.com.
You cannot beat that. I didn't write those lyrics, actually. So I heard that for the first time just yesterday when it was sent in. And I think it's the best song I've ever heard. I think it's incredible. Couldn't have asked for a better tour jingle. So there you go. Tickets, you can also find them in the show notes. And if you haven't heard, I am coming to Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Toledo, Phoenix, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Chicago, Kansas City, Omaha, and Des Moines. All of those links are in the show notes. And then you can also get them on my website. I think there a couple of links we might be waiting on, but I think for the most part we will get them. And then also I did the most personal Patreon live. It's not just the most personal Patreon live I've ever done. It's just probably the most personal live event recording I've ever done. and let me just say, while you're pulling up my Patreon to subscribe, I can't believe it has taken me this long to find the true use for Patreon for a person with my temperament and personality. I have started just using my Patreon for trash talk. It's just everything that I can't say publicly because I don't want it on Google. Just put it behind a paywall. The vast majority of people aren't going to pay that. And if it's anyone who I don't want hearing it, I would see their name pop up as a new member. So so now it's like my Patreon is just like me talking trash. I'm just constantly doing these lives at the last minute. They're not even scheduled for any particular time. I just email you guys like, all right, we got a State of the Dumpster Fire address happening in 3 hours. So I'll be on Patreon. I just can't believe it has taken me this long to realize that this is the proper use of Patreon for me. So sign up for the Patreon, links in the show notes, but it's also just patreon.com/thisisjen. That is Jen with one N. Patreon.com/thisisjen. And when I do the State of the Dumpster Fire live chats, you guys can chat with me live. I read the chats as I'm talking, so I answer your questions and I react to what you guys are saying. And then also, I do make the replays available. So far, I always have. I feel it that one time the wrong subject is going to come up and I am just going to go off and we will not be able to make that replay available. So try to make it live if you can. But so far, all of the replays are available. And when you join, you get access to all the archives and everything. And you get access to all of that at any level. You don't have to join that higher Village Hustle level. You can join at any level and you'll get access to all of that. Although the Village Hustle is also amazing. You should. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is the Jen Fulwiler Show coming to you from Austin, Texas. I am your host, Jen. I am a stand-up comic, best-selling author, and mom of 6. I had 6 babies in 8 years. This is the podcast where you learn the art of the Village Hustle. That is being a hot girl boss, or hot boy boss who knows that love and family and community are the foundations of all true success. Our lovely producer is Caitlin White. And at the link in the show notes, you can find out how to get consulting from her. She does video editing, things like that. She's very good at it. And you can get consulting from Caitlin at that link in the show notes. And don't forget to tell your friends about this podcast. If you like what you hear, wherever you are watching this, there is a share button. I love when you share my content. I love when you put it on Instagram stories. I don't always see it when you do that because so many people say so many crazy things to me that sometimes when I need to protect my peace, I don't look at my notifications from people I don't know, because it might be you saying something really nice about my podcast, or it might be some troll from the atheist Reddit forum who just can't let it go. So, but when I see it, I reshare it. So I love when you talk about this podcast on your social media. All right, let's jump in. I will briefly say we have some great new Apple podcast reviews. One gal used her podcast review to tell me how I showed up in a dream of hers. I was wearing pearls in the dream. And someone else asked she said she wants to know more about fantasy football. Well, that is okay. That now we're really in my wheelhouse here. So thank you for the Apple podcast reviews. Keep them coming. I read everyone personally. Okay. So I am going to do a new thing and we'll see how this goes. I'm not saying I'll do it forever, but we're going to try it. I am going to do a little segment in this episode called 5 Minutes on Football for Females.
Oh.
See, that's some great alliteration, isn't it? We're crushing it on this podcast. How do you get 4 views on every episode with this kind of quality content? This is how I'm blowing up on YouTube. Like I got 2 new subscribers in the past year. It's amazing. It's skyrocketing. It's incredible. So here's what I'm going to focus on what got me into football. And that is the storylines, the plot lines. Men tend to be more stats and analysis focused. And hey, far be it from me to gender stereotype. Guys, my mom was a literal mathematician. I live my life entirely through spreadsheets. I mean, my mom is like galaxy brain math person, but I think in terms of just what keeps us connected to sports, we can be good at numbers all day long, but that I'm not going to sit down and spend a whole lot of time out of my one life on this planet to just like see how many yards someone can throw. Numbers don't excite me that much. The type of number, there are numbers that excite me, but that's not it. So I think that what is helpful to women to be able to engage in sports is the storylines. That is what got me into football initially. I would just watch to see how this guy who has had this struggle is doing. One of my favorite things last year was DK Metcalf. He hired a sign language tutor so that he could talk trash about his opponents and not get fined, because there's a rule that you can't run up to someone and be like, you suck, I'm the best. Like you would get fined and your team could get penalized. But he looked it up in the rules and there's nothing about sign language. So like when a guy, I forget who it was, but let's just say it was number 43. Let's say number 43 missed his block on DK Metcalf. He didn't stop DK Metcalf from getting a touchdown. DK Metcalf went right up to the camera and in sign language said, number 43, my son. Like he sunned him, I am teaching him everything he knows. So this is the kind of thing that you are missing by not following the NFL. And you know what? I think I will dare address the elephant in the room that does keep a lot of people from watching football. And I get it. And I think it's valid. And I haven't addressed it before because you're just not sure what to say about it. So I have a couple of friends who say it's hard for me to watch football because it is physically dangerous. These guys can get injured. And of all the sports in the world, is there any that are more dangerous than American football? Maybe boxing.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know I'm sure that there are some gamers who do like Viking sword fighting with real swords or like samurai reenactments or something. But other than that, it is pretty dangerous. And so I will be honest. I kind of wrestled with that these guys are like putting their safety at risk. I just don't know. Here's what I came to. In order to be a guy who is so into the game of American football that you get to the NFL, which is one of the hardest things to do in the universe, you are someone who naturally, intuitively, on a base level, does not care about your own safety. And what you find fun is always going to be dangerous and destructive. This came to me when it occurred to me. So my father and my grandfather played football. My dad played briefly at the college level. He was on the Texas A&M football team, by his own admission, like 5 minutes. He didn't last. He was like 6'2", but weighed like 130 pounds, and that wasn't getting it done. So my dad loved football. So did my grandfather. Big football family. And so when football didn't work out for my father, what he did is join the Army, got in the Green Berets, and dedicated his life to jumping out of airplanes at high altitude at night over jungles. Also not safe. And every like major football guy I know, they're the kind of guys who, you know, when nurses ask them why they are in the emergency room in this full body cast, their answer is, I don't know, but the last thing I remember saying is, hold my beer, y'all watch this. That's football guy, you know? So it's not like they would be living lives of comfort and safety if they were not playing for the NFL. They're crazy. I say that as the daughter of a football guy. They're crazy. So that's my take on it. I'm not saying it's a good take. I'm not saying it's the best take, but that is when I have been rolling over that issue in my mind, that often comes up for me. So, and football's very much on my mind because some of you know there's a broadcaster at SiriusXM, the drive time host of the channel I used to be on, his name is Lino Rulli. And he has a fantasy football league now. I don't know if it's a new league or if this is the first year I was invited to it. We'll pretend it's a new league because surely I would not have been left out of previous years. But as of this recording, in 24 hours, we will be doing the draft. And to answer the question from the Apple Podcast reviews, the way fantasy football works, and yes, this is required knowledge for everyone. I know I have listeners in Australia and other places that don't follow American football, but fantasy football is so much a part of the cultural ether and other fantasy sports. I bet in Australia they have fantasy kangaroo hunting. I'm kidding. I'm sure they have to have fantasy rugby, fantasy soccer. Maybe I'll throw in some other in Ireland, you know, I bet you guys have fantasy alcohol poisoning. I bet you guys have. I have like all Irish heritage. I could say that. So maybe I could just be xenophobic for the rest of that'll be what this episode is, offending everyone outside of the United States. So so just stick with me for a second, even if this is not really your world. I do think this is just cultural lingo that you should know a little bit about fantasy sports. So in the case of fantasy football, you're putting together your dream team. So you're forgetting who is actually on what team. And you're just saying, okay, what is the best quarterback that if I could create my own actual team that is going out on a field to play, who would I want to have as quarterback? Oh, okay. Patrick Mahomes. He's so good. So I'd like him. And then wide receiver, like, DK Metcalf for sure. I think is he a wide receiver or running back?
I have zero idea.
Okay. Well, it's one of the two. And like what tight end would I love? Well, Travis Kelce, of course. He's one of the best of all time. Not just the Taylor connection, but he's one of the best ever. And that's why it's fantasy. It's like your fantasy team. And then what the fantasy services do. So like, for example, Yahoo is a big one. They track how these players do at each game. So let's say, Patrick Mahomes throws a really long pass for a touchdown. They calculate, okay, that translates to whatever amount of fantasy points, and then that goes to your team. Or Travis Kelce catches, Patrick Mahomes throws the ball really far and Travis Kelce catches it and it's a touchdown. Depending on how long that throw was and how the touchdown went and all that, you get a certain amount of points in fantasy. So it's a lot of fun. It's great for people also who have any kind of numbers-minded thoughts. And it's also very competitive because in the draft, so everyone in your league has to be there at the same time. And And so you have a short amount of time in which you can choose your players, but it's so annoying. Like, so I wanted to choose this really good wide receiver first. So I chose him, and then all other 11 people in the league have to choose. And I'm like, don't take Travis Kelce. Nobody take Travis Kelce. I want somebody takes Travis Kelce.
Yes. I did the same thing.
And so you see, all right, like that's fun. I mean, there's a sense of competition. It gives you new people to hate and resent because like they got Kelce and like they knew I wanted Kelce. And so it's so fun. So that is what fantasy sports are. And I'm in our neighborhood league with Caitlin, but now I am in a second league in Leno's league. And by the way, in all of these leagues, you win money if you come in first, second, or third. There is a buy-in. Everyone pays a certain amount of money to play. And then the winner gets a lot of money. And then second place and third place get a little bit less money. But yeah, so you can win if you do this right. I'm telling you guys, this is my new life. I mean, I said a couple episodes ago, I don't know who is going to parent for the next 6 months because my husband, he also takes fantasy football really seriously. Now I'm in 2 leagues. I mean, and I'm following college football a little more because I have 2 kids at Texas A&M. I mean, that's so, and I have high school kids and I'm following their football team. So we have Thursday is NFL, Friday is high school football, Saturday is college football, Sunday is NFL, and Monday is NFL. I only have 2 days a week that I can really do anything right now. So I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm just going to have to get a nanny or something because I cannot be parenting right now. I just have a lot going on with football. And if we ever have a sudden replay on this podcast where it's like you expected a new episode and it's one of the replays, it probably has to do with like I was just trying to crush it in Leno's fantasy football league and I just got very busy with my spreadsheets and looking at stats. Okay, so all right, that was all set up to Jen's 5 minutes on football for females. So now, we also have a special intro, as fabulous as the one that you heard to celebrate my tour, the new tour jingle. We have a very special intro. I paid $3,000 to have this created. So this is the special intro for Jen's 5 minutes on football for females. Yes. Yeah. I'm telling you, when the comedy millions come in, I really will have intros for just everything. Okay. I'm actually going to time myself. All right. I'm starting a timer. I should do an intro, right? I haven't thought this through. Should I do like my announcer voice?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
for sure.
All right. Here. All right, guys, I'm starting my timer. This is Jen's 5 minutes on football for females, where we talk about football in a way that the chicks will be interested in. I need to work on that intro, maybe. What I'm going to do with this segment is tell you one storyline that you should be following heading into this weekend of football. And this might make it a little more fun to watch football with the guys. Here is the storyline that we are going to be focused on headed into this football weekend. So you might have heard last year that a quarterback named Aaron Rodgers, you hear a lot about Aaron Rodgers, not just for football. So a quarterback named Aaron Rodgers was injured very quickly in a game for the Jets last year. So he was brought over to the Jets. He was new on that team. And you also have to understand that the Jets are kind of a long-suffering team. They have been wanting to win for so long, and their fans are very faithful, but the Jets have just kind of had a rough go of things. So when Aaron Rodgers came on, he was 39 years old, but still doing really well, had some great stats. And so it's the first game of the season. Everyone's like, yes. Aaron Rodgers runs out. There's huge fanfare. The whole world is watching. How will Rodgers do on the Jets? This might be the Jets' year. I was saying this. I watched their montage at the beginning of the game where they're like, this might be our year. And I'm like about to start crying. I'm like, this is the Jets' year. I feel it. Aaron Rodgers played 94 seconds in that game. And on the 95th second, he tore his Achilles. And if you know anything about tearing your Achilles, that is not an injury that you just shake it off and forget about. It took him out for the season. I mean, that to explain what that did to Jets fans, it would be like if you had been planning your birthday party for a whole year and you were so excited and you were all dressed up and you walk into a room and instead of your friends being there, someone just stands up and punches you in the face and it's an empty room. I mean, that is how it felt to Jets fans. And so their whole season did not go very well. Obviously, the guy who came in, I mean, he tried, but he was not Aaron Rodgers. So now Aaron Rodgers is back. And that was actually in question. A lot of people said he's 39 years old. He's 40 now. Is he ever going to come back? I mean, maybe he should just retire. And Aaron Rodgers has a lot of haters. So a lot of people were saying, yeah, he needs to just retire. It's over. Take the L and accept that your career is over. But Aaron Rodgers is a very ambitious guy, and he said, no, I am going to recover from this Achilles injury in record time, and he did. I mean, it's almost miraculous how well he recovered. Okay, so now here's the side plot that nobody is talking about. This might be more than 5 minutes. You know what? Stop the timer, because this is such an interesting turn of events, and you will only hear this here. No one else is tracking with this. I think that Aaron Rodgers has another psychological thing going on that is going to make him more driven than ever. I predict that Aaron Rodgers is going to surprise people with how well he performs this season because of the Taylor Swift factor. Aaron Rodgers has been a really big Taylor Swift fan for years. Caitlin, play this video where he was interviewed about his favorite Taylor Swift song. Play the video.
Taylor Swift song.
Too many to count. Anything off of Folklore, probably. August, the one going way back. I would say New Year's. Was it New Year's Day or New Year's Eve?
New Year's Day.
That's a banger. Yeah, how do you pick just one? But if I pick one album, definitely Folklore.
Okay, now
What's your favorite Taylor Swift song?
Listen, anyone who says Folklore is their favorite album, that is a real fan. That would be like, for those of you who are children of the 80s and 90s, when people would say, I like the Beastie Boys, I loved Ill Communication, and you're like, okay, okay. But you knew the real Beastie Boys fans loved the album Paul's Boutique. Like you're a real Beastie Boys fan if Paul's Boutique is your album. So that's the same thing with Taylor. If Folklore is your album, then you're real. Like you're not just saying it because it's trendy. And also he's talking about The One.
Yeah.
I mean, I am very familiar with her catalog of work and I rarely get to that song. So he's a deep Taylor Swift fan. Now, that recording of that interview was right before she started dating Travis Kelce. I am convinced that Aaron Rodgers had a crush on Taylor Swift and was very deeply jealous when Travis Kelce, who plays for a different team, started dating her. And what's interesting is it was a game that Taylor was at, and Aaron Rodgers showed up to it, and the game was at the Jets. The Chiefs play the Jets, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
it was that game.
So that's right. Yeah. That's that. I'm not making this up, right?
Right. No. He flew out from LA.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. Okay. And by the way, this is why I'm the right person to talk about football with you, because I'm not, I don't know it as well as some people, but I know what matters. So when the Chiefs played the Jets at the Jets Stadium, which is in New Jersey, that was, I think, the first game, or it was one of the first games that Taylor came to. Aaron had been rehabbing in Los Angeles. That's a little bit of a ways away, and his injury had just happened. We were just like 2 weeks into his injury, and he was dead set on doing this miraculous level speedy recovery. There was no need for him to be out at that game. He really shouldn't have been there. But Taylor shows up. What do you know? There's Aaron, and he looked really good. Like he was wearing some great outfit. He looked amazing. And then in the media, like a week later, a week later, he started trashing Travis Kelce just apropos of nothing. Just out of the blue, he starts trashing Travis Kelce and, saying like it was something. Oh, and it was like over something Travis said about the vaccines, which is like in 2023, you're still, what? Like this is not timely at all. So that just convinced me beyond the shadow of a doubt that Aaron Rodgers had a crush on Taylor Swift, always dreamed that he would have a shot with her, and it really bothered him when she started dating Travis Kelce. You cannot convince me that I'm wrong about that. So to take it to this coming football weekend. So the Jets play on Monday. There is only one football game on Monday nights, and that's it. The Monday Night Football is always kind of a highlighted game. It's a game that the experts predict will be very good and very competitive, or at least interesting. So only one game's on Monday night, so that's a big deal when it's the Monday Night Football game. So Aaron Rodgers' comeback, assuming he's starting. I guess he's starting, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Aaron Rodgers' comeback, presumably, will be this coming Monday night. So much is riding on this for him because he has so many haters who say he's washed up. This year in December, he turns 41. That's very old for a quarterback. Yes, Tom Brady did it, but most don't. He turns 41 this year. Taylor Swift, he was like such a fan of hers. She's dating this guy from the rival team, and Travis Kelce is younger and he's more famous and he's a media darling. And a lot of people said, even people who aren't Aaron Rodgers haters, simply said he can't come back from this injury. This is stupid. Like he should have just given it up. And then meanwhile, we have the poor Jets fans. Like they just want to have a good season, like just for once. And they're just, their hopes have been dashed so many times. So just think about the pressure that Aaron Rodgers is under headed into Monday Night Football. So he's the quarterback for the Jets. I forget who they're playing, but it'll. Oh no, they're playing the 49ers, who almost won the Super Bowl. Everyone thought the 49ers were going to win the Super Bowl last year. I mean, they're like the best team, one of the best teams ever. They're amazing. So the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is coming back. He has no Taylor Swift, not a whole lot of belief in him. The Jets are like, could we just have one good thing happen to us ever? And they're playing arguably the most difficult team to beat in the league. So there you go. That is going to be Monday Night Football. That is your plot line. So ask your boyfriend, ask your husband to point out Aaron Rodgers when he comes on the field so that you can watch that. Okay, that was actually double the amount of time I said it would be. So I'll have to think of an alliteration on 10 minutes on team sports for people with... Okay, never mind. Trying to keep this podcast PG. Where are we on time? Okay. I'm going to... There's another topic I can push to next week. But we cannot skip the rap beef. If you guys missed it, I think it was episode 213 is I was talking about the Young Thug trial. So this isn't exactly a rap beef, but it's rap related. And it's kind of a rap beef of a rapper with the government. And even law and order type people are on the rapper's side. So that's episode 213, where I talked about the Young Thug trial. Just one of the funniest things ever. I mean, God sent us this trial for our entertainment. I can't even give you a summary because it is just so much. So I will choose, for those of you who didn't listen to episode 213, the most salient thing to know, and just know there are 10 other crazy things about this trial, but the most salient thing to know is that Young Thug's attorney, Brian Steele, got held in contempt of court and almost put in jail. He was actually, the judge tried to send him to jail, but the judge was so off base, the judge actually ended up getting removed. But yeah, you didn't know that?
No.
Okay, well then that's enough. I'll get to that update in a minute. So what happened was, the judge in Young Thug's trial had an ex parte communication with a witness. I guess ex parte means like outside of the courtroom. It was in the judge's chambers. Now, I think, I'm no lawyer, But I'm pretty sure if you do that, you have to have both the defense and the prosecution in the room. The judge cannot be talking to witnesses without everyone knowing about it. So Young Thug's lawyer, Brian Steele, found out that this judge, who eventually was removed for wrongdoing, had this witness brought into his chambers. And what had happened was the witness is a guy named Kenneth Copeland. And I guess initially he said he was going to testify. And then Kenneth Copeland said, actually, I don't think I want to testify. And so if I understand correctly, that is why Kenneth, who's, let's see, his name in the YSL gang is Little Woody. So Little Woody, who is AKA Kenneth Copeland, the judge brought him into the chambers, presumably to pressure him to go ahead and testify. And he was threatened with jail time if he didn't testify and all of that. So Caitlin, play that first video, not the new one, but the one that is from the previous episode, to summarize what happened. This is actual court footage from the closed camera stuff in the courts of Brian Steele, Young Thug's attorney, talking to the judge about this ex parte communication.
Why? State of Georgia. How about the witness? How about Mr. Copeland, who supposedly announced he's not testifying and he'll sit for 2 years, and then supposedly this honorable court, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. This court supposedly said, I can hold you until the end of this trial. Ms. Hilton supposedly said, actually, all of the defendants and then all 26 people are disposed of. If that's true, what this is coercion, witness intimidation, ex parte communications that we have a constitutional right to be present for. So I understand that you're upset towards me, but I don't know what I did.
Mr. Steele, I still want to know, how did you come upon this information? Who told you?
What I want to know is, why wasn't I there? Why,
sir, I'm going to hold you in contempt if you don't tell me who tell me who this information was
from. I don't want to
come
be
from.
held in contempt.
Well,
I'm not answering that question. That's attorney-client privilege information. I am not answering.
Attorney-client privilege, unless you were in my chambers, that's the only way you can figure out.
I
tell you what, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. If you don't tell me who if you don't tell me who it is, I'm going to put you in, I'm going to put you in contempt, because that is not attorney-client privilege.
Attorney work product privilege. I am not.
How did you get that information supposedly from my chambers? Did somebody tell you?
I'm not. You should have told me.
You got 5 minutes.
Well, so you see the bailiff walking over now to arrest him.
This is what I was told. Mr. Copeland made statements that he admitted.
So Brian Steele was sentenced by this judge to go to jail for that. And Brian Steele requested that he be put in the same cell as Thug so that they could work on the trial together. And then all of the hip hop accounts and people on social media, the hashtag had been Free Thug, and then it was Free Thug and Brian, which is just incredible. But because this judge was so off base with his behavior, he actually got removed, and there is a new judge now. So all of this was centered around Little Woody's testimony. Little Woody is Kenneth Copeland, so they often refer him to as Mr. Copeland. So finally, Mr. Copeland did testify. He did make a deal with the prosecutors to testify, and he ended up admitting, and he ratted out two guys, Little Mike and Quiz. Oh, my autocorrect. I wrote it down and my autocorrect put quiz.
I think it's Quiz.
Quiz. Okay, yes, Quiz. Okay, so he ratted out Lil Mike and Quiz and talked about everything they did in this gang activity that the prosecution is so interested in. Here is more footage from the courtroom of how that went. I believe this is the prosecutor talking to Mr. Copeland about what he said about what Little Mike and Quez did.
That you gave the car to Javante, who gave it to Lil Mike and Quez, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you would agree that detectives Gaither and Dennis are telling you we've never even heard of Lil Mike and Quez, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland, Lil Mike is not a real person, is he?
No.
That was the finesse. You invented a person out of thin air, correct?
Yes.
Quez is not a real person. You invented him out of thin air on the spot, correct?
Yes.
You invented those people to take the heat off of you and put it on fictional characters.
I done told y'all that's what I do.
That's your finesse. Right?
That's what I do. So I think he's probably going to jail now. That's just so funny. I want to adopt that as my street name now. I'm Quez. Wouldn't that be funny if I'm like, I'm actually Quez? Like, no, he didn't make it. It's been me this whole time. That trial is the most entertaining thing ever. It's incredible. It's just one thing after another over there. Every time I open up social media, there is some new insanity from that trial. And again, I went into the whole thing on episode 213. I actually created show notes with a checklist in Notes app on my iPhone that I went through and I checked off each box as I hit the topic because to just make sure that I actually got every topic. And normally when I do show notes, I'll just put some notes out there. And if I don't feel moved to talk about it, I just skip it. But oh no, when I'm talking about rap beef content, we take this very, very seriously. And like when I was talking about the Kendrick and Drake beef, people would say, Jen, you're a suburban mom. You have all these kids. How is this hip hop world relevant to your life? I'm like, this actually sounds very familiar. Drake, Kendrick going back and forth like, this person sucks. This person stepped to me and I'm going to tell everyone all their secrets and how awful they are. I mean, I'm like, that happened at the PTA meeting last week. This is very relevant to my life. Very relatable. I think that's why I love all this rap beef stuff. Cause I know people who are like constantly beefing with each other. So, yes, I will keep my eye out for more rap beefs. It does seem like the Drake and Kendrick beef kind of settled down. And the consensus is that Kendrick won it. I can't say that I liked Drake's songs better because that would out me as not being a serious hip hop fan because Kendrick is more legit. He is actually from like a bad part of town in Chicago and Compton, and Drake is from suburban Canada, but I do like his music better. But it's funny, I was listening to Drake's song the other day and there's just so much nuance when you follow this, when he's like something about like when you came to the 6, you had to run from it. And I think the 6 refers to Toronto. Caitlin, would you Google OVO, that's Drake's crew, OVO, what does the 6 refer to? I feel like this can't be true, but I think it's Toronto. And Drake is always doing this. He's like, I'm from the 6, like Kendrick and his crew couldn't handle it in the 6. It's like, well, I mean, all I ever hear about on social media is what a utopia Canada is. Like, we have no crime because we have all these laws. Like, it's like, all right, well, then I shouldn't have to deal with both people on social media saying that Canada is a utopia and Canadian rappers acting like they're hard. Just choose one. I can only deal with one. So what is it?
Yeah, it's Toronto because the area code's 416.
Had to run from, listen, I'll tell you, I had to run from Toronto. I did because I forget, it was like some major pizza chain. I don't remember whether it was like Domino's or whatever. And I said, I was doing a speaking tour thing. And so I said, I'd like a supreme pizza. And the guy was like, yeah, I don't know. We don't have that. And I said, you don't have a supreme pizza? And he said, no, I don't. Yeah, we don't have that. And I said, okay, it's a pizza. So I guess I was just kind of looking for a pizza that had a lot of stuff on it. And he said, oh, you must be using the American terms. He said, you're thinking of an extravaganza. I was like, I can't take any more of these Canadian shenanigans. You knew what I was talking about. You knew exactly what I was talking about. Oh God. So anyway, and you know what it is? You know when, okay, I I love Canada. Okay, I know I have a lot of Canadian listeners. I love Canada. I'm going to take my tour there. You know what I think it's like PTSD, because I knew a guy in college. So I started out at Texas A&M and I graduated from UT. But when I was at A&M, this guy came from Canada to A&M. Talk about culture shock. I mean, massive culture shock. But he would always do this thing. I think he was trying to seem exotic for the ladies. And so he's like, I'm foreign. I am not an American. And just the disappointment on people's face when it turned out he was Canadian. But he would do this thing where when we would reference anything American, he would pretend like he didn't know what we were talking about. And one time, I'm not making this up, George Washington came up. And he's like, who's that? Is he someone in our dorm? And we're like, he was like a president. And he's like, well, I wouldn't know because I'm not from here. I'm foreign. I'm from a different country. And see, I still have PTSD from that, from this guy pretending like he had never heard of George Washington because he's so foreign. But it really was the extravaganza thing, actually. I think that's like, didn't know what a supreme pizza was. So anyway, Canadian rappers just need to not say they're hard. That's all I ask of Canadian culture. Just don't say that your rappers are hard. Okay. All right, let's get to the main topic. But before we do, I just want to remind you, I did a very kind of intimate, opened up a little bit, Patreon live, and the replay is available. I forget what date it was from, but it's the most recent replay. When you sign up, you'll see it. Or actually, if you go to the website, you'll be able to see, like, it shows it. When you join the Patreon, you get access to all the archives, including the 2 other smack talking lives that I did and made the replay available. And those things are available at any level of membership. The Village Hustle level is the higher level, and that's where I do my kind of like life advice stuff. And the Village Hustle episode that just came out, what was it, 55? Mm-hmm. I think it's an interesting topic. It's about how when you follow your dreams, it can actually impact your physical health. Nobody wants to talk about this other than, like, Stephen Pressfield occasionally goes into this territory, but nobody else does. That it can actually make you physically sick. And I mean, like, physically real, not in your head, like really sick, or make you really feel good and feel well, depending on how things are going with putting yourself out there in the work that you're meant to do. Nobody really ever likes to talk about that, but I did in the Village Hustle episode 55, patreon.com/this is Jen. And that link is also in the show notes. Okay, let's talk about stepping into our villain era as people pleasers. Because I think we love the idea of being in our villain era, but some of us, we just can't be bold the way other people can be bold. And I've often said it's probably because of my neurodivergence. Because when you have ADHD, you cannot be a Karen ever, because if something is wrong, it's probably your fault. I mean, if I go and yell at a clerk at a fast food place, you gave me chicken nuggets and I ordered a burger, and like I'm, throwing things and screaming, they'd be like, this is a Chick-fil-A. And I'd be like, is it? Oh, Burger King's, it's next door. Okay, you guys can put your phones away. I'm going to head out. Yep. No, that was on me, guys. Yeah. I can't be a Karen because I am too neurodivergent to be confrontational. I am non-confrontational by necessity. Anytime I feel uppity about anything, and I'm like, I'm going to tell them that, you know what? That's it. I've seen how women do this in the movies. I'm going to be like a DA who marches. I'm going to put on a blazer and I'm going to march into their office and be like, I'm not going to take this anymore. And it'll turn out I accidentally deleted the email. I thought it was another like Shein extra 30% off discount for frequent customers email. And I hit delete because I'd already bought all that stuff. And it turns out, that was actually the really important. Okay, they did actually follow up on that. Yeah, they did. It's not, honestly, I have the temperament that I could be a confrontational person. I have that vibe, and I'm tall. I'm 6 feet tall, and I look like a banshee. I mean, I could be intimidating if I wanted to. It's just I don't ever understand what's going on enough to be convinced that I'm right. I mean, yeah. So some of us, I don't want to be a people pleaser. I just have to, because my mind is just like always broken. I don't know how else to say it. So I've been really focused on kind of being in my villain era without seeming bossy, without seeming like a witch, without seeming overly aggressive. And you know what? One of the things that you hear about that I think a lot of us worry about is people say that when women are in the workplace, if they advocate for themselves, people say she's a, you know, again, I keep the podcast clean. You can listen to it with your kids, but the B word, the word that was on that mug that I one time held. A comedy friend of mine got me a mug in huge letters all across the mug that says boss AB, and I managed to hold it so that you can't see the word boss, but you can see the other two words. So that was amazing. So yeah, so that there is that perception that you will be thought of as being bossy and other B words if you advocate for yourself in business settings. I will say, I've worked in almost entirely male-dominated industries. I worked in the high-tech industry as a programmer. Talk radio, certainly. I mean, come on, who in talk radio is female? It's like such a guy's world there. Publishing that was a little more female-heavy, but certainly stand-up comedy. 90% men in this industry, especially among clean comics. Name another female comic other than Leanne Morgan who is actively like out there touring, putting out new content. Who's another female comic who does clean comedy that you could listen to with your family, who is actively working right now? I think it's me and Leanne holding it down, just the two of us. So anyway, so it's 99.9% of like clean comedians are male. So I've spent a lot of time working around men, and I will say, it has not been my experience that when I advocate for myself, people think I'm being bossy or aggressive or whatever. I think let's go into gender theory here a little bit. Let's, Caitlin, hit the sound effect that it introduces Jen's gender theory corner. Excellent. Good. I do think that people have different expectations of men versus women and the way they communicate. One of the things that I noticed in the high tech world is sometimes when women were treated differently in meetings, they would get very offended. They would say, I'm a manager and I was trying to lay out this thing for these three programmer guys, and they interrupted me quite a bit, and they just kept talking about how they know all this stuff, and I just felt like they didn't really hear me out on my strategy. And I was like, yeah, look in the mirror. You're so hot, and they're in love with you. Like, they're not interrupting you because they don't respect you. They're trying to impress you. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. They should have been quiet and they should have listened, but it's funny how a lot of women in tech would get this narrative like, I'm not respected. And I was like, I think all these nerdy guys, like they haven't spent a lot of time around women, and they're just like really excited to talk to you. And this is like a trial run for them for like talking to women. They haven't had a lot of experience with it. And it's funny how it was just a lose-lose because the women would get so offended. And these sweet guys, I swear they were just like trying to impress them. It was such a miscommunication. So I do think that when a woman expresses anger, I have noticed that people are obviously they don't like that. They feel stressed out. I don't think it is a response of like she doesn't have a right to feel that way. I think it's almost like everyone wants women's approval. I mean, we have a higher status in certain ways. And So if a woman storms into a meeting and is like, you guys did a horrible job with this, I'm furious. Like, I can't believe what a terrible thing that you guys all did on this project. I do think that would have a different impact than if a man did it. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, I would say. I think it's like people they are a little more eager to please women. But let's also be real. When men yell at people, express emotion, are frustrated, or like slamming doors because they're mad about something, it's funny how the feminist rhetoric is always, men can do whatever they want and they're just respected. But if I say anything, people think I'm a witch. And it's like, have you ever been in an office? Because when the men I worked with in tech would do that, everyone would be like, they would use different words, but I would say the words, they had more syllables to them. And they carried a little more weight, and it would be like, that guy's if I bleeped it, it would be like a 7-second bleep. It's not like, if our 28-year-old vice president were to walk into a meeting in the tech world and, be like, you guys are all, you suck and you've done a horrible job with this build and like it's full of bugs and the clients hate it. And, you guys have disappointed me and I think you're awful. And if he walked out and slammed the door, nobody would be like, that's a powerful man who I respect. They'd be like, that bleep, bleep, bleep. It would just be different words than they would put on a woman. And frankly, I think worse words. So here is what I have noticed about the differences between the genders and how people react to them when they express displeasure is sometimes I think women can make the mistake of expressing a little more emotion, and that can be problematic. And so especially for those of us who are fully in our villain eras now, if someone has done something, and we're talking not just in a business setting, in a personal setting or whatever, that you feel like crosses a boundary that you had set pretty clearly. So this could be something like you have an employee who didn't do something they asked you to do, or it could be you've told your mother-in-law not to criticize your housekeeping when she comes over and she just did it again. So this is personal or workplace. One of the things that men do that I would say leads to more efficacious communication is they are very results focused. At least men who are successful and respected and tend to do well. Obviously, there are plenty of idiot men who don't handle things well, but for men who are like, they do well in the workplace and they're seen as good leaders and good bosses, it's all about the results. It's all about just, it doesn't matter how I feel and it doesn't matter how you feel. I am laser focused on achieving this result and nothing else matters. And you see this in communication with men and women. Like my husband and I always go through this, that I'll be ranting and raving about like, you will never believe what this person, she put this on Instagram and I know that was about me. She didn't tag me, but like, I know it was about me. And he's results focused. So he's like, well, I think what you should do is you should block her and then, and I'm like, I didn't come to you with this problem for it to be solved. Like, this is not a results focused conversation. As a woman, that women, I think we're always looking to build relationships and communities. So when I come to him with a problem, I am looking for empathy so that I know that he and I are connected, so that I know that he is interested in my struggles and tracking with the extreme amount of pain that all the bad people in my life are causing me. And so this is, if you have these kind of miscommunications in a marriage or with any men, with your father, whatever, this might be what's going on, that your goal by presenting some bad thing that happened is to know that he is connected enough with you to care. Your goal is to reaffirm the relationship by seeing that look of concern in his eyes. Like, really? That must have been so hard for you. Let's talk generally about how hard your life is. Let's talk about how bad these people are. Sharon did what? she didn't. Because that's what we want from it. Send this podcast to the man in your life. Tell them to listen to this part, because that's what we want from men. And to speak to their results-oriented mind, what we're looking for is a relationship-building moment where the currency there is empathy. When you express empathy to your wife of how she's feeling and how bad the people are who hurt her, you are using that currency to build up emotional intimacy, which is what she is looking for with that conversation. But a lot of men, because they're so results-focused, are just like, okay, well, that's pretty easy to solve. Just don't call her back. Like, no, no, that is not, no. Listen, obviously, like, we know how to solve problems. That's not what we're coming to you for. We are coming to you for the relationship building aspect of the situation. So to translate that into villain era, a lot of us, a lot of women, I do think, I hate to stereotype, but there's a little truth to this, that we do tend to bring emotion into our boundary setting more so than men do. So, again, so let's use the mother-in-law, for example. Your mother-in-law comes over and she's rude to you again, and your husband has talked to her about this, and she walks in and is like, wow, I would say this place looks like it's been robbed, but that would be an insult to robbers. And it's like, oh, I've talked to this woman. Oh. So I think the way to be in your villain era without fully burning down your life is to simply focus on the result. Forget about your emotions and don't even express your emotions in the situation. Just say, and maybe not even in the moment, maybe even later. Just take them aside and say, hey, I would love for my house to be a place of peace. And when you make these comments, I don't know, maybe I'm being sensitive, or maybe you shouldn't say it. Who knows? It's academic. It doesn't matter, because it is my house and I'm just trying to set a certain vibe. So go ahead and just don't say that again. And just no emotion and no passive aggressive. Just, this is the result I'm going for. I would like to, right now, put numbers on it. Seriously, like, act like you're like Rain Man, like, just focus on numbers. Like, right now, for every hour you spend at my house, you're making about 2 comments per hour about my housekeeping. I'd like to get that down to 0. I'd like to get that down to like maybe 2 comments for every 1,000 hours you're in the house. Do you think that we could get those numbers down? I'm telling you, the shock and awe that it brings when you put numbers on people who are being passive aggressive and violating your boundaries and saying, so you're making comments like this approximately this often. Could we get that down to like 1 out of 10 instead of 7 out of 10? It really is like the shock and awe. I mean, your mother-in-law doesn't see that coming, and they tend to actually fall in line because you kind of can't argue with numbers. And then it makes them know that their behaviors are being noted, that it's not just floating away and no one's noticing it. It is being counted. So next time your mother-in-law walks in and says that, she thinks, oh, that's 1. Oh yeah, I haven't been here now. Is she right? Like, wait a minute. And then in the workplace, I have come to a strategy of, and this has been many years in the making. It has happened a lot in the course of my long and storied career that I find myself frustrated with the institutions that I work with. I've worked with multiple publishers. I've worked at SiriusXM, record labels. So I'll just speak generally here, but there are times when I just really feel like they're not listening to me, because I just, I thought I made it so clear. And then I said that it's very important to me to do A, and then here is B in my inbox, which is so crazy because I just made it so clear that I wanted to do A. And in the past, because I was intimidated by working with big organizations that have a fancy name and a lot of people would love to work with these organizations, I would let it go because I am a wussy and a people pleaser. And there's that ADHD thing of like, well, maybe I didn't say it. Maybe I sent them an email like telling them I wanted this in my life. And so I would just kind of let it go. And I do tend to babysit other people's feelings. That's another woman thing, that we focus as much on how other people are feeling about our actions as we do on results. Whereas men tend to they focus on the results, and everyone let the chips fall where they may in terms of how people feel about it. And so I did a lot of babysitting people's feelings. And what I found was that it actually made everything worse, because we're not good at predicting what other people think about our actions and about us. And what happens is, when you live in other people's heads because you are trying to babysit their emotions, you end up stepping into this entire fantasy land. I mean, you're living in Alice in Wonderland. It's the upside down in Stranger Things. I mean, you are in a whole different universe that is all speculation. Because the reality is, you don't know what anyone is thinking. Certainly, if we're talking about in the workplace, I mean, but even in your home, I mean, you don't know what anyone's thinking. And so if your goal is to keep everyone happy, the only way you can keep everyone happy is to read people's minds, right? But you don't know how to read people's minds. So you end up just speculating, and you are going to get it wrong most of the time. And then you're taking it's such a lose-lose, because then you're taking all these actions that you didn't even want to take. You're just trying to keep them happy, but you didn't keep them happy because you speculated wrong about what was in their head in the first place. It's a disaster. It's a dumpster fire. It is actually a favor to everyone you work with and everyone you love to be in your villain era, where you get out of their heads. That's another salient thing about being in your villain era. Being in your villain era is stepping out of other people's heads, letting go of speculating. Do they hate you? Why do they hate you? Do they love you? That just stop speculating, stop living in other people's heads, and live only in your own life, in your own head, and take the best actions you can, and not worry about what other people think about it, because you don't know. And if you try to guess, you will probably be wrong. That's villain era, is just saying, I don't know what these people think. And if they have a problem, I am more than happy to hear that. If they would like to communicate with me directly and openly and not passive aggressively, then they are more than welcome to do that. And that's another thing I've been trying to do since I've been in my villain era, is I try to let everybody know I am totally open to feedback. I've had conversations this year where people have said, look, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't want to make you mad, and I always stop them and I say, look, with work stuff, I'm like, look, I am here to make the comedy millions. I am here to make money, and I am here to win, not to be flattered. So you please feel free to tell me anything that you need to tell me. Just tell me the truth. I don't care if it's bad news. I don't care if it's great news. Just tell me the truth. And that's the key to being in your villain era and not caring what people think, but not doing that in a toxic way, doing it in a healthy way, is let people know that they are more than welcome to come to you if you have done something that's hurtful to them, that's wrong, that they think is a bad idea. Totally fine. And then you can rest easy being out of their heads. You can just do what feels right to you, follow your own path. And if someone wants to make you the villain in their story, and they have not come to you with this, and they're doing what you used to do, which is just build up all this stuff in their own mind about what you're doing and what you think, it's like, that's none of your business, because you have made it clear that if anyone would like to have a productive and honest and open conversation with you, then they're welcome to do that. And that is how you get out of other people's heads and stay in your own head, but not do it in a callous way. You still care. You care about other people, but you realize that the best way to treat other people well and to care about them is to get out of their heads and to stop speculating about what they think and feel, because you're always going to get it wrong. A much better path is to be your best self. Be your most iconic self. Step into your full villain era where you are just fully yourself, fully on your path with no apologies, not in their head, but you are, because you have that newfound confidence from being in your villain era, you are totally 100% open to any feedback that anybody has for you. And that is the beauty of being in your villain era. And that is how you can set limits without seeming bossy. All right, there you go. And look, hey, look at how well my life has worked out. You know, you do this and you get dropped by your agent and your manager on the same day. Iconic. I will say it'll bring good things into your life. I'll say that. Join the Patreon, and we will be back next week here on the Jen Fulwiler Show.